team practicing today, and Jayson Tatum's teammates have praised his leadership. Tatum also talking about what kind of leader he is and wants to be.
I feel like I'm very vocal. I might not be the loudest guy, especially in front of the camera, but to the guys in that locker room, when we in practice and on the plane or on the court, my presence is felt, with my voice, and we all put a lot into this game, so we all have the right to give input to each other. That's all I try to do when I see something, try to help guys out.
All right, time now for the Daily Thread. Tom Giles, Amina Smith. We're going to bring in Chris Forsberg as well. And Chris, I'll say this about the coaching change that happens right before the season begins. I think going through that already kind of thrust Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown into a situation where they have to step up and become leaders, maybe more so than they were planning on, which I think could be beneficial. What have you seen so far from Jayson Tatum in that leadership role, and what did you make of what he had to say today?
Yeah, so I roll it back to something Al Horford said probably, as early as the playoffs last year, and certainly he reiterated it this year, is that Tatum got noticeably louder and more vocal in that playoff run. And so it sort of laid the foundation for what they needed this season. And I think it's just gone up a whole nother level. He's never going to be the super over the top, like we see it on the court at all times, but from all indications from people inside the organization is that Jayson Tatum is, quick to take on accountability. He is quick to make sure others are doing things the right way. He's doing all the things that leaders have to do. And I just think even getting to sit down with him before the season, there's a different sort of ability to communicate in a way that he was maybe a little bit more reticent in the past and wasn't so forthcoming with how he was feeling. I think he's more able to vocalize that now, and especially on the court. And I think he just understands, look, if you're going to be a superstar in this league, everyone's looking at you at times, and he has to embrace that. And I think he has, and we heard him say it today, I'm never going to be the most vocal, but I'm, damn sure I'm leading when I need to, and that's a great sign for the Celtics.
Honestly, I never doubted Jayson Tatum's leadership on this team with the Boston Celtics. I do think that Chris Forsberg has a point right there when you talk about Jayson Tatum finding his voice during the playoffs last season. I think that's also credit to head coach Ime Udoka. Regardless of the situation that's going on, you could see that he was pulling that confidence out of him last season. Even in the situation when they were playing Brooklyn, he said, hey, you're giving these guys too much respect. You're giving Kevin Durant way too much respect out there on the floor. And I think something clicked with Jayson Tatum last season where he thought to himself, hey, I am one of the big dogs in this league. I don't have to give too much respect to a lot of these other guys around the NBA. And I think that's pouring over into the locker room where he's a bit more vocal. And just like Jayson Tatum said, he doesn't have to be loud, and you don't have to be loud. You can lead by example. And I think he's really trending in the right direction in terms of becoming that louder leader in the locker room, if that makes sense.
And leadership's a part of it too, but when you look at the Celtics and what they have going on right now and entering the season with title aspirations, and you consider is this Tatum's 6th year, Brown's 7th year? It's just, it feels like they've only been here for a few years. But when you put that together, you would expect them to take another step here as far as maturity and growth, Forsberg.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's so funny. The running joke, right, was always Jayson Tatum is 19. And it's weird to look up and see that it's his 6th year. So I think it all comes. And we've talked about, right, what did Jaylen and Jayson want this year? And I think there was so much in the early years, from year 0 through year 4, you're always trying to prove yourself and prove you belong and prove you can be a top 20 player. And it's all about all-star. We saw how nervous Tatum was and how much he loosened up after getting that first all-star berth. And then it's all about being all NBA and getting the respect of your peers. Well, they've done all that. They've sort of checked those boxes, and now it's about winning. And that's when you become a real leader. And it's easy for guys that are like Al Horford, who've been in the league forever and just command that respect immediately. It's another when now the younger guys on this Celtics team look at Jayson Tatum and they go, okay, here's a guy that has put a team on his back with Jaylen and help get them to the finals, to the cusp of a 3-1 lead. And there's just this buy-in with it. And so his words carry a different weight now. And I just think that that's just part of maturation. Not all players get there. And I think to Jayson's credit, he's forced himself a little bit outside of his comfort zone in terms of being vocal, and he knows the right spots now to use that voice.
All right. Meanwhile, let's switch gears and talk about the coaching side of things as well, because after reports of the Celtics wanting to talk to former assistant coach Jay Larranaga about joining the staff, Chris Mannix reporting that Larranaga is staying put in Los Angeles with the Clippers. Amina, I'll start with you. Do you think at this point, because I look at it and I say, okay, you promoted an assistant coach. Those assistant coaches do things. They're not just there
They're not just hanging out.
Yeah, right.
You know,
like scouting and or they're coordinating the offense for this game or whatever else.
Yeah.
They need to, I would think, find someone to fill that void. I know that Frank Vogel's name's been out there as well. So
yeah. I mean, I feel like, they were looking at Jay Larranaga because they wanted someone to come in and look at the organization, look at the players and see, okay, what is it that we need to do? What can we do to get better and not just get to the NBA Finals this upcoming season, but win an NBA title? And so, you take a look at the staff and you say, okay, even though that seat is empty, you're going to have to fill it with somebody. Chris Mannix talked about this last week and said, talking about Frank Vogel being a candidate for that position, saying, hey, don't be surprised if you see them really vetting him for this position. And people look at Frank Vogel and they look at the season that the Lakers had in 21 and 22 and they make him the scapegoat for that. But, injuries were accredited to that in the season that they had. But also don't forget, they won an NBA title in 2020. So with his name floating around, honestly, I have no problem with them thinking, hey, let's add him to this staff and a team that's already gone to the NBA Finals and let's get them over that hump.
So I think that, especially because he won an NBA championship just a few years ago, that'd be a great guy to get. He's only 49 years old, though. So I would think that he still has head coaching aspirations. And I don't know if this kind of would make it awkward at all on the bench. But Forsberg, do you think Vogel is realistic? And if not, who do you think they go after and how soon can they get it done?
So a couple things. I like the Vogel idea because Brad Stevens has such a great relationship. Brad used to tell us all the times when they were coaching the Celtics and the Lakers, they were both in Indianapolis at the same time. Their kids would play on the same playground. There's a comfort level there with the GM who says, okay, here's a guy who's been to an NBA Finals, won a championship, can help my young coach sort of navigate and understand what it takes to be a head coach in this league. The part for it for me comes down to, I think it's really important that you find someone that Joe Mazzulla feels comfortable with. And, maybe that's someone that doesn't have quite the grasp of the organization, who maybe doesn't have the experience, but it's someone that Mazzulla can look at in a tough moment and be like, what do I do here? Or help me through this. And I know that sounds weird, but even when Brad came aboard, like he brought Micah Shrewsbury, someone that he was very comfortable with, Ime bringing Damon Stoudemire and Ben Sullivan and all these guys that he kind of grew up with. I think you have to have trust in one of the people next to you. And not that Mazzulla wouldn't with Stoudemire and Ben Sullivan, because they are really good and they're probably on a head coaching path as well. But I just think there's something when you have that bond or relationship that makes it easier. But maybe it comes down to experience, and maybe that's the best part that can help Mazzulla at this point. Someone who's been through this and says, okay, look, you've had to drop a play in this instance. How do I help? So it comes down to what can best help Joe Mazzulla, and I think that's what can best help the Celtics.
All right. Well, you got a few days before the first preseason game, and we're less than 4 weeks away from the first game. So, yeah.
Comes at you quick.
Yeah.